You've been saving up money for so long, watching reviews, comparing different models, and all of a sudden, here it is in your hands. A brand new MacBook. Beautiful, and most importantly, it's yours. But after a month, you suddenly realize that 8 GB are not enough, or that you should have bought an M1 Max instead of the M1 Pro. To save your money, today we'll take a look at almost all possible options. Who would benefit from which kind of Mac and which laptop is better to leave in the store? Who knows, maybe you should get a MacBook on Intel. Scary stuff. Alright, let's get right into it. Why would a person who only watch movies and shop online need a 16-inch MacBook Pro even with the M1 Pro chip? It's way too powerful, it's pricey, and it's not very portable. Approximately 80% of its performance potential will never be used, and it will just be wasted money. Although there is a large 16-inch ProMotion display and a large battery capacity for your movies. Anyway, it's not worth it. There are much better options suitable for a user like that. So for fans of watching movies and TV shows, I would recommend taking a closer look at the lightweight and portable M2 MacBook Air. Why? Firstly, this is a new device, in a new design, and with a good battery life. Apple claims up to 18 hours of battery life watching videos and up to 15 hours surfing the web. And from my personal experience, I can say that this is pretty much right. Secondly, as I said, it is incredibly light and portable, which allows you to bring it anywhere with no problems. Thirdly, in addition to watching movies and TV shows on it, you can easily learn something new, take notes, do research, and watch online courses. And if your budget is tight and M2 is too pricey for you, then consider the M1 MacBook Air. It costs less while you get about the same user experience. The only thing is, there is no MagSafe, which is very convenient when charging the new M2 Air, but it depends on your preference. If your budget allows, you can easily go for the 2022 Air laptop. But what about graphic designers, or those who need high graphics performance in their day-to-day use? You might look at the 13-inch M2 MacBook Pro. You will get a touch bar above the keyboard, and this is great for some, until you're faced with the fact that this M2 Pro heats up much more than the other Apple laptops. During some tests, the processor reached a temperature of 42 degrees Celsius, and the cooling system fans worked at a maximum speed of more than 7,000 revolutions per minute. Imagine needing a laptop to design on, but getting a freaking frying pan for $1,300. But then maybe you should take a closer look at the 14 or 16-inch MacBook Pro. But there are a few issues there. If you just started pursuing graphic design and don't have all the skills needed for it yet, then I recommend taking the M2 MacBook Air, but at least 16 gigs of unified memory. This will allow you to work in Figma, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and so on. At the same time, you can take it with you anywhere you need to and even show your designs to a potential client. If you decide to do animation in After Effects, for example, you should be able to go for this endeavor on the M2 MacBook Air easily. If you are thinking about the M1 Air, then I would not recommend getting it, at least because the new M2 Air is 35% more productive at graphics tasks. Sometimes this can play an important role when working on a project, and if you wish, in the future you can connect a monitor and a trackpad with a keyboard, making a complete workstation out of your MacBook. However, if you have been designing for a long time, working in various kinds of apps, and are used to doing everything as quickly as possible, you should take a closer look at the 14 or 16-inch MacBook Pro. I would recommend going with a screen size suited to your needs on the M1 Max chip, if your budget allows. The MacBook Pro on the M1 Pro chip can easily work with heavy files in Photoshop and with any projects in Illustrator. It's capable of running animation in After Effects, working with 3D objects, and of course, video editing will take much less time if that's something that you're into. But I will definitely never recommend video editors to even look in the direction of any generation of a MacBook Air. That would be a strong statement, but it is completely unfounded. For basic editing in Premiere Pro, M1 and M2 Air is enough. Moreover, you can take the 8 GB model to save money if you're just starting to learn editing or you're not usually working with heavy files. For more advanced editing, I would advise you to take the 16 GB so that when working on large projects, your MacBook does not fall apart. figuratively. But for large productions and serious tasks, we have to say goodbye to the Air laptops, because when working on a bigger video, you have to have a powerful computer that can cope with your creative needs. We are not considering the 13-inch MacBook Pro because it heats up too easily, and editing a video on a 13-inch screen is not very convenient. You can once again consider the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. Moreover, I would put even more emphasis on the 16-inch version because I use it myself and it's great. The large screen and high performance really take your editing to a whole new level. You don't have to think about whether your laptop can work with a specific video file, you just do it. I use the M1 Pro model and it's enough for me, but I'm not exactly a hardcore editor. I don't have a ton of effects, plugins, color grading and stuff. So if your standards are pretty high, I recommend you take the M1 Max. One thing I will say though, get at least 32 GB of unified memory. This way you will be much more comfortable multitasking and your SSD will not wither in a couple of years. By the way, I talked about this in this video. But if you often travel and have to edit on the go, you definitely shouldn't take the 16-inch model. It will take up quite a lot of space, so the 14-inch MacBook Pro is clearly a better option. It will take up less space while still being able to offer a high level of performance anywhere. Now, what about MacBooks with an Intel chip? Are they still worth getting? Well, yes and no. Although the new M1 and M2 chips are great, even after almost 2 years, there are apps that are not adapted to the ARM architecture. Therefore, the old MacBook Pro and Intel definitely should not be written off. There are still IT kinks, coders, and you might think that all the software has been optimized for them, but it's not that simple, which a friend of mine experienced firsthand. He has a small startup related to software development. They specifically bought Intel-based MacBook Pros because there are certain apps that are not yet optimized or don't work at all on the new MacBooks with M2 series chips. Intel, in this regard, has long been a proven solution offering stable certainty for software development. Here you can look for 2019, 15 and 16-inch models or even 13-inch models, and keep in mind that on these laptops you can make software not only for Apple OS but also for Windows. So it might be important for some to have a stable working Windows module on their MacBook. Sure, for a regular user it may sound pretty wild, but for coders it's simply convenient. And what about 3D modeling? Yeah, things are not looking good here at first glance, but in reality everything is not so grim. If you do your research online on different blogs or forums, many do not recommend MacBooks for work with 3D models. Only Cinema 4D works fine on my MacBook and Autodesk Maya with some extra effort. There's only one good reason to use a MacBook for 3D: you don't have another computer. So they write on the forums, and unfortunately it is true. For 3ds Max, they basically install Windows OS on a MacBook and get to work, so there really aren't that many options. It's not even worth considering the basic MacBooks with the M1 or M2. Here you need to look at the models on the M1 Pro and M1 Max processors. In 3D modeling, graphics performance is becoming more and more important, and therefore only the top-end options can be recommended. Again, you need at least 32 GB of RAM. 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros are able to provide all of this, but only get them if you plan to work in Cinema 4D, Autodesk Maya, or other well-optimized 3D modeling apps. Otherwise, you will go through denial, anger, and the rest of the stages, but ultimately a disappointment. You might remember some time ago when Blender was not very suitable for running on a MacBook, but in October 2021, everything changed and Apple joined the Blender Development Fund, which means sponsoring their projects. But Apple also provides engineering support and helps out in the development of the projects. As a result, all MacBooks support Blender natively. If you're just getting acquainted with 3D modeling and don't yet know whether it's for you, you can get any M1 or M2 MacBook Air, preferably 16 GB to start. In addition, Blender is free, so many kick off their 3D journey with it. If you are serious about it, then consider getting the 14 or even 16-inch MacBook Pro if you need a large screen, with the M1 Pro or M1 Max chip, considering the fact that software for Apple processors will continue to develop. And if you are an office worker, you write reports, make presentations, or simple graphics for social networks, then you don't need anything like that. Even the 14-inch MacBook Pro can be too fat and powerful for such an easygoing job. I recommend taking a closer look at the M1 or M2 Air. Again, I recommend the 2022 model because of the upgraded design, the return of MagSafe, and all the other features that you yourself know all about. For photographers, things are also not so clear-cut, although again, it depends on the level of photography skill and other skills of the photo artist. One thing is for sure, here we'll never recommend a MacBook on Intel. MacBooks with Apple's own chips do a much better job with editing photos. So there are two no-brainer options. Both are for those who often move with their MacBook and need a large deal of performance power. The first option for beginner to amateur photographers, those who don't edit 1000 photos at a time. They do not require something crazy from their MacBook, which would be the M1 and M2 models of the Air laptops. This device would be plenty for you. But if you are a very advanced professional, I recommend you take a closer look at the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro. This laptop will be slightly heavier and bigger, but you will also get about twice the performance and other nice specs like ProMotion and stuff. As you can see, there were no tests and benchmarks in this video. This time I decided to give my recommendations for MacBooks for certain types of users and tasks based on all the information I gathered. You can see more detailed tests and benchmarks on my channel by clicking on this video and this one, and smash the like button if this video was helpful to you, and see you in the next one.